Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing well out there. So, I recently got a great DM from someone who asked a really good question that I thought would make an awesome video response here on the channel. So, this person hit me up, and I'm going to share the DM with you here in a moment, asking if we can use just microdosing to get all the way in terms of our healing progress here, or if we need to be doing higher dose psychedelics in order to properly benefit from psychedelic therapy. And since this is a foundational topic here on the channel, I thought this would be of interest to a lot of you guys. And so I thought I'd make a video response rather than just directly reply to this person. So, making a video here responding to this question: can we just use microdosing and effectively do all the healing we need to with just that? Let's talk about it. Okay, so as you can see, here's the question, and I'm just going to read it off here and then I'll do some talking head response to it. So the question he asked was, one other request: would you consider doing a YouTube video on microdosing? In particular, how far do you think someone could get with a low dose magic mushroom regimen on their own? There's a strong thought form in the air that full on journeying is where all the real healing happens, yet my body loves microdosing and my body has said no to journeying for now. So that's the question. And let me give my take on this. Okay, so here's my take on this. I want to point out something off the bat here that was an assumption of mine when I initially read this question, which is that the person has only asked, how far do you think someone could get with a low dose mushroom regimen on their own? It doesn't specifically stipulate that they're talking about healing. So my assumption is that they're talking about healing, given the context of the rest of our conversation and the place where I got DM'd and the kind of posts that I make and this kind of a thing. My presumption is that this is about healing. But to be really intellectually honest here, obviously psychedelics are cross-contextual. They're not only healing agents, they're also great for fun, for play, for recreation, for physical well-being, like reducing inflammation, for example. They are great for spiritual exploration, obviously, and philosophical exploration, etc., thought exploration. So it really depends on what context we're talking about. So I would say if your intention is, say, spiritual exploration and you want to go deep into exploring your own internality or the mystery of the universe or the mystery of life or what God is or these kinds of things, I'd say more likely you're going to benefit from a higher dose. And I would say that also the other caveat to that is there's probably a dose at which you're not going to benefit anymore. So there is a probably an upper end to that dose beyond which it's just so your cognition so offline, your ability to process what you're experiencing is so far gone that perhaps it's less useful. So I think there's a window where it's useful, but that window is going to be a higher, medium to higher dose range. If we're talking therapy and healing, though, I think it's a very different answer. So, in my personal opinion, and I'm a bit of a contrarian in the psychedelic space in this sense, even though I'm very, familiar with the substances, my view is that if we're talking therapy, right, in psychedelic therapy, it's the therapy that matters more than the psychedelic. That's like the pithy little short answer I would give. It's the therapy that matters more. It's the know-how of the therapy. It's the application of the therapy. It is the consistency of the therapy. That's where the leverage is. That's where the magic is. From my point of view, when we're looking at psychedelics and therapy combined, what we're looking at is essentially the psychedelic being used in a lot of ways as kind of a psychological lubricant, if you will, something that smooths out the therapeutic process, makes access to things easier, open things up more easily, allows us to think in divergent new ways about old familiar questions or problems or struggles, et cetera, et cetera. But the psychedelic is secondary to the context and the skill set of the therapy. This is something that I think I've said over and over, and I feel like I'm being repetitive about it, but I think the message has not gotten out there yet that, quite frankly, most people make this mistake when they see and think about psychedelic therapy. They think it's the psychedelic that's doing the healing, that, we're so consumerist in our culture and our society, and we're so kind of conditioned by big pharma and, pill consumption as a way to resolve our problems, that we really think that, oh, I eat the psychedelic does all the rewiring and the fixing of my brain, and then I'm fixed and I'm good. And pardon my passion, you can tell it's a little bit of a bugbear for me. And then the assumption is, oh, that's it, I just carry on, and now I've eaten the right thing and now my brain has healed itself. And that's not it at all. The psychedelic is simply a facilitator of the work. It's something that makes the work easier. So the question in my mind, in terms of dose in psychedelic therapy, is how much is just enough to get you to the place to facilitate that process. And I would say, from what I've seen and kind of the modality I've been developing and the type of work that I do, and perhaps this is because I'm trained from as a hypnotherapist and not as a traditional talk therapist. Um, a lot of the opening that happens is in the approach. It's in the therapeutic approach, not in the medicine. So, in other words, what I'm saying is what I've found in the way that I'm able to approach people, and when I teach people how to work with themselves, if we approach our nervous system in the right way, if we know how to listen, if we know how to connect, if we know how to build a safe, connected interconnection with our own psyche, then what wants to open up and heal will. It will volunteer itself. We don't need to force our way in there, if that makes sense. And so, from my point of view, with proper therapeutic technique, you don't need a lot of the psychedelic to kind of smooth that unfolding process. It's because the technique itself is smooth and safety creating and opening in and of itself. So, in other words, so I hope this is making sense so far. Please let me know in the comments down below if I'm just being rambling or if this lands for you. So, in other words, if we apply proper therapeutic technique and we know how to work with ourselves, do I think a microdose could be enough to facilitate that little bit of smoothness to help the opening and help the healing progress? Yes, I do. Do I think a person could heal all the way with only microdosing as the tool without having to overwhelm themselves with a big, intense trip? Yes, I do. And I think for a lot of people, that might even be the better way to go, to be frank. Um, when I'm doing psychedelic support with someone and we're discussing dosing, it depends on the context and the approach. It also depends on how long we've been working together and how much trust. There's a lot of factors. But the major thing I'm always thinking is, what's that dose we can put this person at, which is just enough to get them where they need to be to do this work and no more, right? So, not that I'm against big doses or big experiences. I think they're fun and wonderful and beautiful and can be powerful and profound. But I'm not thinking, how blasted can I get this person, and then do therapeutic work with them. That doesn't make sense to me on a lot of different levels. I can explain that in more detail if you'd like, but it just simply doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that's wise. I'm looking at what's just enough to get the person in the zone to be able to do the work where they still have access to themselves, they still have their cognition online, they still, they feel comfortable enough to be there, and we can really effectively work as a team together, right, to help this person heal. So, again, that's a very different worldview. I think it's really important to kind of make clear in the psychedelic therapy landscape right now, we have a lot of different worldviews around psychedelics and around therapy and around how these two elements combine in different ways. So there are people who are big believers that you have to go massive doses and it's almost about resetting your brain or breaking the program. There are other people who are all about big doses to push past the dissociation and get into what needs, healing ultimately in this kind of aggressive, using the medicine to bypass defenses kind of way. There are other, people who are really into the medicine does all the healing. I'm just going to sit you and sit next to you and be here as a lifeline for you so you're safe, but you're just going to take the mushrooms and go in and get blown out. And it's you and the mushrooms, right? And then there are other models where it's much more relational and about co-regulation and mutual support, and there's more contact, and so not physical contact but psychological contact. So there are a lot of different models in the psychedelic therapy landscape, and I think that's important to say here because when you're reading this stuff online and you're looking at different talking heads and the degree of certainty they might have while they're presenting things and the kind of school of thought, often these people are only representing one angle on things, right? And if I can be so bold to suggest this, I think a lot of times, a lot of these people are not thinking outside their own paradigm. They're not thinking about what are all the different ways to approach this. They've picked one paradigm that they like and they're kind of running with it. There's not always so there's kind of a confirmation bias element there. There's not a lot of like trial and error of different approaches to see which one might be most universally useful or effective or what have you, right? So that's kind of where we're at with the psychedelic therapy landscape. There are a lot of different schools of thought, a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of dialogue and discourse and cross experimentation going on, but there's also a lot of like people who are like, this is the way, and there can be kind of a rigidity to their lane, and they're not always looking at all the other ways. My particular feeling, having tried a bunch of different approaches, is what I'm sharing here, that we want to go lower to medium dose, ideally, and including microdosing being totally effective. And it's much more emphasis on the therapeutic skill, less emphasis on the medicine itself doing the healing. And I can give all the reasons why that's my view. For example, I don't think it's very wise to rely on the medicine because the medicine itself is chaotic, right? Psychedelics are, when we look at the neuroimages of what psychedelics do to the brain, the crosstalk amongst different regions of the brain is not predictable. It's not consistent. It's different from experience to experience. And if you've taken them enough, you start to see this. You're like, every time I take them, the quality of the experience is kind of different, right? So therefore, if we're relying on the medicine to do the work, we're really dealing with like a lot of unpredictability in terms of getting results. There are a lot of other reasons that I'm not a fan of big doses. I think it's high risk, high reward. When it works, it can work really well, but there's a lot of what I would call ecological, meaning systemic kind of repercussions for the person and the person's nervous system that comes along with that high dose thing. So, would I recommend high dose? Not necessarily. Do I think microdosing works? Absolutely. So that's pretty much my view on this. But if you're someone who likes high dose experiences or medium dose experiences, you're not a big fan of microdosing, that's fair play too. I would say, again, there's a difference between a therapeutic context where we're focusing on healing and a self-exploration context where we're focusing on exploring our psyche and the depths of our mind and symbology and deep meaning, and or if we're doing a spiritual exploration where we're exploring what is the transpersonal consciousness, what is this field of energy that seems to pervade all things, what is the language of vibration, what is the language of non-duality, what these are all different contexts and different use cases, right? And I think it's important to be clear about that because people like to conflate them, especially therapy and the other two, right? So that's my thoughts on this. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that clarifies and is a bit helpful for you. Let me know what you think down below. Leave a comment if this resonates for you. Leave a comment if I wasn't clear at all and you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Leave a comment if this helps you sort out where you're at and what your intention is, what your approach is, and what your preference is. So, hopefully we can kind of destigmatize lower dose work because I think that's where a lot of the value is for a lot of people. And we can help people start to understand that it's really about getting some therapeutic skill, even if you're just working with yourself, knowing how to work with yourself, or if you are a therapist too and you're learning the ropes of psychedelic therapy, to really keep your eyes on the prize in terms of your skill and your ability being the major factor that facilitates this for people. I think this is really important to get clear on this difference, right? The medicine's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I love psychedelics. I think they're amazing. I think they're beautiful. They're profound. They've changed my life. But also at the same time, we have to keep our eyes on where the real mechanism of change and healing is. And I don't think it's just the medicine. Okay. So anyways, enough for now. Much love to you all. Take care.